Space. We are not muted. Audio is working. What up? All right, welcome. So, welcome to week 1, day 2. I got out of those 4 characters, I missed most of them. Week 1, day 2. I'm gonna say notes.md. Okay, is the font big enough for people? If it's not, move around or ask me to make it bigger. What's up? How you doing? It's day 2 of boot camp. How's day 1? Is all right? Yeah, not bad. Cool. You want to do it again? We'll just do more like the same assignments over and over again until you feel like you're done with them. Then we move on to others. No. Are you excited for the rest of the week? Was there anything that was particularly hard yesterday? Any challenges or struggles you want to share? No? Snap. All right. It's all just easy, I guess. So do you know what today's lecture's about? It's the dev workflow. I know I already kind of used this word yesterday. These first 2 days, as far as lectures go, are really going to mostly be about how to approach things as a dev, right? So I'd said that yesterday, but I'm just gonna. It's not gonna be the same lecture. Today I'm gonna actually write code. But again, the things that I want you to keep in mind as I go through little demos are my kind of like approach for working on stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set like a bit of a goal for ourselves. I'm gonna have a problem statement, like I'll say, oh, I want to make a function or write a program that does a particular thing. And the point of the lecture isn't going to be how do I make that code work. It's going to be more about like what's my process for going about writing that code, right? I might use some stuff in this code that you don't understand. I might use some stuff that you do understand. That's cool. That's not the focus of the lecture, right? I like to start off all of my lectures with a little bit of highlighted goals. This is like, what are we gonna learn today? We're gonna learn about coding incrementally. We're gonna learn about how to debug, manually testing code, and writing clean code. In general, if I was to sum this up as a quote, it's how do we build towards a solution in an ideal manner? Right? Coding incrementally, debugging, manually testing code, and this is really important, writing clean code. I know a lot of us here, you don't want dirty code. Anybody see this circle here again? Oh, circle. Save. Okay, there we go. So I'm saving my progress. So these are the goals. I'm going to add an extra goal here as well. Talk about Markdown a little bit. Alright, we'll talk about Markdown a teeny bit. I do want to mention that today I'm going to be coding. Do I want you to code along? Absolutely not. Right? Don't code along. If I do something that seems like cool and you're like, whoa, what was that cool thing that Nima coded? Sure, like write down that one line maybe so you can Google it or ask me about it later. But don't attempt to code along because you'll just probably fall behind or just write down a bunch of trash because I'm going to write down a bunch of trash and then fix it. So that's that. I'm going to start by talking about Markdown teeny bit. Yes. Absolutely, yeah. So the notes that I sent out yesterday, what I tend to do is I have good notes, and then during lecture I write like bad notes, and then I send out the good notes unless there's stuff that I wrote during lecture that I really want to bring in, right? So you will have access to the stuff that I'm writing, but it might look a little bit different than how I wrote it here, right? And usually in the lecture notes that I sent out, so if we look, for example, at the notes that I sent out yesterday, can you go compass? So yesterday was week 1, day 1. You can take a look at where do we go? little lectures, life as a dev. And then down here in the notes that I sent out, oh, that's funny. The thumbnail is a picture of me. So here, like, I'll often put links. So in yesterday's notes, I put like a link to the repo that we made yesterday, right? And then I also put a link to a repo that I made the last time I did this lecture, in case you just want to see the differences. Link to Sublime shortcuts. There's a thing called Sublime Tutor, which I do recommend taking a look at. It's an interactive tutorial for Sublime Text, right? Just to show you the neat tips and tricks that I showed you, but more stuff. And then a Git cheat sheet. Right. So take a look at the notes, because I'll often put in, little goodies. Sometimes there's a meme or two, or like a YouTube video. But often I'll put links to documentation. And then I'll go through and generally like format the notes a little bit nicer. So that, you can read, oh, git add does this thing or whatever. Does that kind of answer that? Cool. So today, it's the dev workflow. These are the things that we're going to look at, including a little bit about Markdown. Really, all I want to say about Markdown is look it up, right? Just take a look at it, because it'll help you just write nicer looking little documents, right? If you notice, if you hop around GitHub, often they have, discover repositories or whatever on the side. Whenever you look at somebody's repo, such as whatever this repo is, like, oh, beautiful. So nice. Look at all these links, these little lists, these headings. The person even has an image in here, right? So nice. You can format all that stuff using Markdown, and it turns out to actually not be that hard to write. And the nice thing about it, let's see at this one here. See, here's another little bit of Markdown. The nice thing about it is, like, you can write like code in Markdown so that it looks formatted like code, right? Right. You can use Markdown to just write nice documents for yourself. And on top of it, when you look at Markdown so when I look at Markdown on Git, it'll be all nicely formatted like this. When I look at Markdown on my terminal, it generally also looks nice, right? Things will generally also look nice as I'm writing it on my terminal. Does that kind of make sense to people? It's like a language for writing notes that looks nice when you write it, and it looks nice when you look at it on the browser. Cool. Like, you remember working with HTML at this point? Did HTML look nice? No, it looked like hot garbage. It looked so bad. So this is like a nicer version of that. Okay, that's really all I wanted to say about Markdown. Look it up. Coding incrementally. This is going to mean something for us. It's going to mean writing a teeny bit of code at a time. Teeny tiny. Right? So, heads up, warning. Today's lecture, not going to move very fast. It's going to move pretty slowly. In fact, almost a glacial pace, right? Glacial pace. My goal with today's lecture is to show you, all the stuff that I have ready for the demo, but to also end with all of you being bored out of your skulls. Like, I want you to be so bored. Right? So if you're bored by the end of it, that's good. Like, pat on the back to me. Glacial pace of coding. Okay, so I'm going to set out a problem here. Problem statement. Problem/challenge. And the problem here is write a Node.js program that takes in an unlimited number of command line arguments, goes through each, and then prints out the sum. We want to skip any non-whole numbers, but we do want to support negative numbers. Right? Word problem. Here's a bunch of stuff. Right? So write a Node.js program that takes in an unlimited number of command line arguments and sums all of them up with a little bit of extra stuff here. Okay. As I'm going through this, the things that you might want to take notes, again, on are things like, oh, Nima used this particular function. I wonder how that function works, right? Write it down and go Google it later, right? Or, oh, Nima made this particular decision. Maybe I'll ask him about it and then take notes about his answer for that. Right? Okay, so my kind of initial process for looking at something like this, because this is, it's a question. You're given, I need to figure out how to start coding it. I start by breaking it up into like discrete chunks. Write a Node.js program. That's like a command, right? Write a Node.js program, and I'll say, okay, that's a good chunk. Write a Node.js program. Takes in an unlimited number of command line arguments. That also sounds like a chunk to me. Goes through each. Sounds like a chunk. Prints out the sum. Okay. And then this stuff here, skip any non-whole numbers, but we do want to support negative numbers. For right now, I'm even going to say that this is stretch. Right? Like, because this stuff here, it sounds like extra fluff to me. Do you know what I mean? The bulk of the work seems to be in the fact that I go through each number and then I print out the sum. And this here sounds like if a number is not whole, don't include it. It sounds like a whole if kind of situation. Like, here's some extra stuff. So I'll tell myself that I need to get this stuff to work first before I even look at this here. Right? I want to make something that does this at least, and then I will reiterate. I will just kind of loop over my code and see, okay, what do I need to do now to make this part work? Right? So what I'm getting at here is this idea of coding incrementally, but also coding iteratively. Right? So we're going to hop into writing this code, but I'm going to define a couple things a little bit more concretely. When I say something like iteratively or incrementally, these both kind of touch on the idea that I need to set milestones or checkpoints for myself, right, as I work towards a goal. I'm not going to be able, most likely, to write this all out at once. Right? I'll set little goals for myself. It's like, just in general in life. If you want to get to, you want to get to boot camp on time in the morning, I'm like, all right, step 1, I got to set an alarm. The alarm wakes me up. All right, step 2, got to get my feet off the bed. Step 3, I gotta go shower. I gotta go eat breakfast. Little goals where you can reward yourself a little bit every time, right? You go like, yes, I made it, right? And I might even git commit when I hit those checkpoints. And those little goals are also places where I can make sure that I'm actually heading towards the goal that I had set for myself as a main driving point, right? What can happen is that if you have one big goal and you don't plan out the little checkpoints for yourself, and you're just gonna code, an hour might pass, and you've written some beautiful, just amazing code. Beautiful code that doesn't actually do what you had intended to make it do, right? It's very, very easy to just tunnel vision, right? Just kind of tunnel in on a thing and code and then realize that, oh, I totally misunderstood the problem, right? So what we really need to do is keep looking at this and understand it and almost do a thing called grok. Has anybody seen the word grok before? Right? So to grok means to understand something intuitively or by empathy, to understand something in such a deep, deep way that it almost becomes part of you. Let's see. Yeah, to understand something so much that it becomes part of you. That's what we want, right? To grok. It's not a fun sounding word, but that's what I want you to do. So, I'm going to start with the first step here. Writing a Node.js program. Okay, so what I know about Node.js programs, right? What I know about Node.js is that in my terminal I can run these programs, right? So let's assume that this program is called, what's it supposed to do? Sum numbers, right? I should be able to go node sum numbers. Is that big enough for everyone? Sum numbers .js. And one of the things in here was that it says it should take an unlimited number of command line arguments. And I'll tell you that what a command line argument is that it's anything that you write after node sum numbers JS. So if I go node sum numbers JS 1, 2, 3, these are the command line arguments, right? Arguments that I pass in through the command line. So I'm going to make myself a couple little test cases. I'm going to make myself test cases so that I can check to see as I code my program, is it doing what I want it to do? So if I go node sum numbers .js of 1, 2, 3, 4, what's the expected result here? Yes, 10, right? If I go node sum numbers of 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, I might expect a 0. And if I do node sum numbers of 1, 0.5, 6, and 10, I'm going to expect 17 because the 0.5 should be ignored. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. So I've set myself little test cases. I might add to this. I might modify them. I might make them bigger, smaller, whatever, as they develop. But it's important to set myself a couple little actionable goals, right? My program should receive these things and return 10. If I want to wrap some code in Markdown so that it's code and not text, I can go backtick, 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 and then generally put the extension for the language. So this is some JavaScript. Actually, this isn't JavaScript. I don't know why I wrote that. It should just be like that because it's like stuff that I'm going to write in the terminal. I just want to make it look nice and formatted when I put it in my README. So ideally, I should be able to do this. I should be able to take that, toss it into my terminal, and when I press enter, I should get 10. Okay, didn't get 10, but it's a place to start, right? I got some errors. What errors did I get? Mm-hmm. It didn't find the file. It didn't find the file sum numbers JS inside of my week 1 day 2 directory that I'd made. And, if I ls right now, absolutely, that file is just not there. Right? That's a good place to start, right? So what we've done here is I ran some code, see what happens, and then I'm going to make one change. I'm going to make the smallest possible change to not get the same error anymore. I'm not saying I'm making the smallest possible change to fix the thing, right? Just to not get the same error. Okay, I have made that file, sum numbers JS. I'm going to go ahead and run the exact same code that I ran before, right? This is the scientific method, right? We're going to keep making small changes, have a hypothesis, run, and just see what happens. So when I run this now, I didn't get 10. It didn't console log 10, but I didn't get that error anymore, right? And now I've learned something. I've learned something, and that something that I've learned is that if I have an empty file, and I try to run it, nothing happens, but it doesn't break, right? That's something that maybe you didn't know before. Now, the next thing here is I don't have any errors, so I'm going to set myself new goals that aren't fix the errors. They're, maybe make this test case work. I want, when I run this, 1, 2, 3, 4, to console log 10. So I'm going to go ahead and go console.log 10. Sneaky. Very sneaky. My script, all it does right now is when I run it, let's see, node sum numbers 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 should be 10. Let me run it. Absolutely, 10. Beautiful. Right? Hand it in. I got it. Right? And then I'll say, okay, well, what about the other test cases that I have, such as, 1 minus 1, 1 minus 1, or even if I made more of these positive ones, node sum numbers .js, 4, 2, and 3, these should add up to 9, right? So I could go ahead and grab these and go, okay, well, what happens now? And you're not going to be surprised by this, but when I run this, I get 10. I have a bug in my code. Right? I can set myself new goals now, right? I can set myself a new goal, which is, okay, when we get 4, 2, 3 as the input, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, I have to print out 10 instead, right? That's one way for me to fix this thing, right? This is what incrementally means, right? And iteratively. Incrementally means I'm picking small new things to add on to my program. Iteratively means I'm going to have to loop over my program with my eyeballs multiple times and rethink how I'm doing things, right? So we've gotten to this point now where it matters. It matters for me to figure out what numbers are being passed in. I don't know how to do that. How do I get the numbers? Because if I look at the way that I've kind of split this up for myself, I need to first write a Node.js program. Done, right? I've got that figured out. And now I'm on takes in an unlimited number of command line arguments, and that's where I get stuck. Takes in a bunch of numbers. So something I could do is just completely ignore this. Right? I could, in my thing here, say, hey, you know what? I'm going to write this in comments. Assume we have all the numbers. Let's just assume I have the numbers already. What would I do with those numbers? So what I mean here is, if I set in my checklist that I need to figure out how to get those numbers from the command line, right? If that turns out to be a little bit of a task, I could pretend that I already have those numbers and maybe put them in an array. I could go let. Are y'all comfortable with let? Should I? Yeah? Can I get a nod from any, or like a hands up from anyone who's uncomfortable with let? No one? Okay, cool. So I could go let numbers equal, and then maybe make an array. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Sneaky Nima has, made his own list of numbers here. My own list. And then maybe as I want to test my program, the other one that I wanted to try was, what was it here? 4, 2, 3. I could then try 4, 2, 3 by hand and just play around with this. And I've kind of bypassed that issue, and then I have to fix it later. So, in theory, if this is what I'd done, if I'd pretended that these are my numbers in an array, then I'd move on to the next step, which is go through each of the numbers. Right? And then later on, when I have time or when it's really crucial, I can go figure out how do I take in command line arguments. I'm going to, right now, just do the command line argument stuff first, but I just want to let you know that you don't have to do things in order necessarily. You can fake parts of your like pipeline. Yeah, you can fake that stuff. So get numbers from command line. How do I do this? Does anybody know? I don't either. What do we do when we don't know something? We could Google it. I was gonna be like, all right, there's 3 options. There's like A, cry, B, ask a mentor, and C is Google. And I would put these in this order. So ask a mentor should come after Googling, and crying should, almost never really. No, once in a while you can have a good cry when you can't figure something out. I've been there. But like Google, then ask a mentor. Specifically, ask a mentor after 15 minutes of being stuck. Right? Really want to point this out. I want to make this clear. Do everything you can. Everything you can. Go all out. 110%. Right? For 15 minutes. If you're stuck for 15 minutes, flag for assistance. The whole kind of idea behind bootcamp is that mentors are here to like leapfrog you over things that you would be stuck on for days, right? So for me, when I was learning to code, how do I get numbers from the command line? That might have taken me a couple days to figure out, right? That's why I'm a bad programmer. But you, as soon as you run into that issue for more than 15 minutes, right? A mentor is going to help you out and you get that boost, right? That boost. So Google, ask a mentor after 15 minutes of being stuck. I am going to put this in the notes. I'm going to put it as like a heading over here. You know what? Let's make it a heading 1. Ask a mentor, 15 minutes of being stuck. Just going to plug in my computer because it's about to die. Okay, so how do we get numbers from the command line? I'm going to straight up Google it. And hot tip. When you're Googling stuff, phrase it in the, in the form of a question. That's something that I've always found works really well for this kind of stuff. So how do I get command line arguments in Node? Right? Because often somebody's already asked this question on the internet. How do I pass command line arguments to a Node.js program? That sounds pretty similar to me. Right? It's all kind of stuff here. But often, what I suggest looking at is Stack Overflow. Right? Stack Overflow is a good place to find people asking questions and other people giving answers. It's like the Yahoo Answers of code. As you make your way through bootcamp, the 2 places where I do want you to go to for answers are Stack Overflow and the documentation. Right? So any program that you use or any language that you use is going to have its documentation. So if I look up Node.js command line arguments, again, there should be something in here that points me to Node.js. Maybe if I write docs, let's see. There you go. If you write docs to find like the documentation, I could even find the Node.js documentation. And it's often just a big list. Just a big list of the things that you can do with that language or with that program, right? So what can you do with Node? And every single one of these things is going to have some examples and some explanation. Right now, that's going to feel really terse. It's going to feel really ugly for you. If you go look at this stuff, it's not going to make much sense. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, you're going to become more and more comfortable with this style of document, right? So right now, it's not a bad thing to rely on Stack Overflow. Generally, when I go to Stack Overflow, I'll look at the way that the question's asked. I'm trying to run Node like this. Node server.js and then some text. and I want to access that text, like the word folder, in my Node program. And I go, okay, well that sounds similar to what I'm asking. I have a bunch of numbers as opposed to one name, but maybe I'll keep digging through this question to see if it is actually related to what I want. Generally, the best answer will have a lot of votes, right? 2666, and a check mark, right? Visually appealing, right? And it'll tell me, okay, maybe there's more than one method of doing it, but this person says the standard way of doing it is that the arguments are stored in something called process.argv. Now, I said that for the purposes of this lecture, I'm going to use some code that you might not understand and that I just won't explain. I'll tell you what's going to happen right now is I'm going to copy all this code that this person gave us. Process.argv.forEach, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff, I'm going to copy it. And I'm just going to paste it in my program. Right? I'm just going to paste it. And I'm going to run my program again. Just to see what happens. What happens with the one little change. I'm going to run node, yada yada on 1, 2, 3, 4. And I got back a bunch of stuff. I got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got home. I got vagrant some numbers. And then I got 1, 2, 3, 4. And maybe I'll test this out a couple times. Like what happens if I go potato, tomato, celery, olive. There you go. This is my grocery shopping list. 1 potato, 1 tomato, 1 celery, and a single olive. But I'm seeing those things in here also being printed out. Okay. Now, I might recommend taking like a look at this stuff kind of later without me on your own. Maybe ask me to come by and help you out with it. But what I'll tell you is that process.argv is an array that holds the path to node, which you don't care about. It holds the path to the node program on your computer. So if I look here, this goes all the way out to something that ends with the word node. Because node's a program on your computer. It's saved somewhere. The other thing it holds, so it holds, let's see, the path to node, the name of the file you're running, and then everything else is the arguments you passed. Right? That's what process.argv is. So if I wanted to get my first actual argument, it's not going to be process.argv0, because that's going to get me node. It's not going to be process.argv1, so that's going to be the name of the file. It's going to have to be process.argv2 and 3 and 4 and 5, right? Onwards. So it's going to go 0 and just paste a bunch of these. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to console log all these. Woo! Isn't that wizardry? Isn't that so cool? Woo! What? Anybody here like a Star Wars fan? Now, you know, like the whole like unlimited power. So that's what this feels like. So I'm just going to console log all the process argv. Kind of see what happens as I pass my 1, 2, 3, 4 in here, and I got back these 2 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, undefined, and then 10. Right? I'm not just doing this to kind of like waste your time. I want to show you that like you should play around with these tools. Like approach this stuff kind of like how a child might, right? Where you kind of like meander your way towards the solution, right? I know that I'm going to head somewhere eventually, but right now I just want to see what these tools do, like tinker a little bit. Right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Would it make sense to everybody that if I took out this 6, I wouldn't see the undefined anymore. Would anybody be confused by that? Right? Because the 6 right now here, this one is undefined. Because I only passed in 4 numbers. So after it finished 4, when it tried to console log something, it didn't have anything to console log anymore, so it went undefined. I'm going to get rid of that for a sec. And run this again, and I'll see that there is no undefined. The other thing that I'm going to do right now is get rid of these first 2 numbers here. Would it make sense to everybody that if I comment this stuff out, I don't get those names anymore? I don't get those names anymore, right? I don't get these 2 lines in here. Obviously, I can't have this go on forever because the problem statement says it needs to handle an unlimited number of command line arguments. Obviously, that's not something I can do. But what I might be able to do is figure out, now that I have the arguments, how do I get everything but the first 2? Now that I have the arguments, like all of them, including those 2 names at the top, how do I get everything but the first 2? That's something that I'm going to have to Google again. Alright, we go to Google and we say, okay, hey Google, let's talk to Google as if, you know, it's like the, okay Google, like, hey Google, how do I get the, see, this is an array, how do I get everything but the first 2 elements in an array JavaScript? Right? In JavaScript. Right? What? The intelligence. Something called array prototype slice. Maybe. Right? I can't trust Google. I have to dive in and really dig in to see what this does. This person asked a question here. Like, Google's cool because it'll throw in related searches. How do I remove the first element of an array? I can click on this and see there's some stuff. Right? There's apparently an array splice, an array slice, shift, unshift, filter, right? Swap array elements. We're going to have to dig our way through the documentation until we find an example that kind of looks like what we're trying to do. So inside of array prototype slice, which is that first one that I clicked, it says, and this thing here is called the Mozilla Developer Network, or the MDN docs. Right? We're going to talk about this a little bit in a second. But up at the top here of this page, I see the slice method returns a shallow copy of a portion. That's what I'm looking for, a portion of an array. A portion of an array selected from beginning to end, without the end included. And it doesn't change the original array. The original array will not be modified. Now, if that description still feels a little weird, I can look at the examples. I see an example here that says var animals, ant, bison, camel, duck, and elephant. And here they're console logging animals.slice2. Right? Let's slice. Snip, snip those 2 animals. Right? Let's see what happens. Expected output is an array that says camel, duck, and elephant. And I look at this and I say, what? Ant and bison were taken out using animals.slice2? That's exactly what I'm trying to do. That's exactly it. I don't even care about these other demos here, right? Like, this here, mind-blowing to me. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I could even test this. In the Mozilla Developer Network docs, the MDN docs, you can run these demos by clicking run, and it'll print out stuff. Like, okay, what happens if I say array slice 4? Run. Just get elephant. If I say array slice -1, I did not know that. I get elephant. Array slice 2. Camel, duck, right? And just really play around with it until I feel comfortable with what's going on. Bison, camel, duck, elephant. So apparently if I want to get rid of the first 2 elements, I can say array.slice and then 2. And let's see. Here I am. I'm going to comment out all these things. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to console log. Let me just do it right here. I'm going to console log process.argv. And I'm also going to console.log process.argv.slice2. And just see the difference. And I run this, and one time I got out everything including those two names, and the other time I got out 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Right? I'm on my way towards just having those numbers. It is 9:45. So in a second I'm going to let you free for a little bit, and then we're going to come back and continue. But I want to end it on end this first half on kind of two notes. The first is the MDN is amazing. So good. So when I'm talking about two places where you should be looking for answers, those two places are Stack Overflow and documentation. And for the first big chunk of bootcamp, like this week, the MDN is your go-to source for documentation, right? Because they'll have excellent examples. They have a syntax explanation. This might be a little bit difficult for you to understand at first, but over time you'll get it, right? I want to help you out with this stuff individually, right? Syntax. And then they'll explain all of the parameters that you need to pass to a method with like paragraphs, right? And this shouldn't scare you. Like, it's not like, oh, it's a lot to read. More like there's as much information as you want. You can kind of pull from this whatever you kind of want. And they'll have so many examples just to make sure that you fully understand what's going on, right? So the MDN, you know, this friendly little, this is like a T-Rex. I don't know if anybody's seen the Mozilla. The Mozilla mascot is a, yeah, it's like a little T-Rex, right? Friendly T-Rex. It's gonna teach you all about coding. So that's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to point out is we have the numbers, right? We figured out that if I want the numbers, I can do process.argv.slice2 and maybe save this in a variable, like let numbers equal that thing and console log numbers. Okay, I'm just putting it in a variable because I'm going to use it. But what's funky about this number? It's a string. It's a string. I heard like mutterings. It's a string. It's a string. So we might have to do something funky when we come back from our break to maybe turn these strings into numbers. Right? We're going to explore that a little bit. If that's something that still doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. We're going to talk all about it when we come back. It is 9:48. So let's say, should we start up at 10? Does that sound good? Take a break until 10? So at 10 on the dot, we're going to start up. Sound good? Are there any questions? Yeah. Oh no, right. Whoops. So in bootcamp, at least at the first bit, you should strive to use semicolons. Semicolons are not mandatory in JavaScript, and I use a particular style that's non-semicolon-y, so I need to remind myself to use semicolons. Thanks for calling me out on that. The reason I personally don't use semicolons is A, they're not mandatory in JavaScript. Like JavaScript will put in semicolons where you don't put them, and the other reason is that I started programming with languages that forced you to use semicolons. And I have some bad memories from those times. So it's almost like my own little rebellion. Like I won't do it. That's really about it. But you should, for right now, strive to use semicolons, and I should remind myself to do that as well. Cool. Good question. And nobody else? All right. So at 10 on the dot, we'll continue. Somebody left these like super hip glasses here. And every time a new cohort starts, I'm so tempted to like wear them because I feel like I look smarter with glasses. But the thing is, oh, what? These are clear glasses. These aren't real glasses. I could wear them. Yeah, because these are... Kelly, did you know that these are fake glasses up here? Did you know that there's like fake glasses up here? Do I look smarter like this? Blue light? Oh, so like I could just wear them. Just gonna see. Okay, so I'm shielding myself from the light. Oh, ouch. Wow. Yeah? Oh, thanks. Yeah. Wait, did you say you think I'm cute? Is that... They're cute. Okay. I'm like, that's alright. We'll see what Remy thinks as well inside. Remy, what do you think? I thought you cared. You see me every day. Look, there we go. Yeah. What do you think? I got glasses yesterday. No, they're mine. No, they're the blue light ones. Do you think they suit me? Wow. Wow. I'm gonna wear them just to spite all of you. Also, cause I don't see any difference. But all right. So what we're gonna do is also I'm gonna cry a lot later. No, I'm kidding. So what we're gonna do is just kind of continue from where we were, which is we had ended up getting the numbers, console logging them, and then seeing that the numbers that we were getting looked a little suspicious. A little suspicious. Right? Now, we might not realize this. I'm going to pretend that we didn't notice. I'm going to pretend that we didn't notice, but maybe it'll come into effect later. Once I've console logged the numbers, or once I've gotten the numbers and I've split them so that I only have the ones that I need, the next thing over here that I'd set for myself is go through each. Right, go through each. What does that intuitively kind of suggest to you that we might need? Some kind of loop, right? Some kind of loop. There's many options for us for looping through this. So, loop through the numbers. And eventually I want to print out the sum. How do I loop through the numbers? This is an array. How do I loop? I could do a for loop. Okay. I asked that because there's a couple different options. So I could do a for loop, or I could do a thing called for each, which you haven't really talked about very much yet, but I just wanted to see if anybody had that. So for, and a for loop's going to work this way. I go for, var I equals 0. Well, I is less than, what should it be less than? Numbers.length, right? So I'm going through all the numbers, and then I plus plus. And I'm just going to start off by console logging numbers. I. Does it make sense to you that I need to go numbers square bracket I? What am I doing here right now? Exactly, I'm accessing a particular element in the array. Right? So I'm going to console log each number. I just want to see, is it going to print out each number on a new line? And I got back each number, 1, 2, 3, 4, on a new line as opposed to what I had before, which was all in one. Right? Just kind of setting myself up for things. I know that I'm looping through them, and I know that I eventually want to print out the sum. How do I get to printing out the sum? What do I do with each of these numbers? I have to add them. And to where, though? to a variable, right? I'll need a bucket somewhere where I can start with the actual counting. So I might say, okay, let me do let. I'm just going to replace this one as let as well. Let sum equals, and then what should I start my sum at? 0, right? These questions are important to ask, because right now we're talking about a sum, right? But you're going to eventually be working with more complicated things, and a question to ask yourself is, what do I initialize at? Right? What am I initializing at? So I'll go sum equals 0, and then maybe for each one of these numbers, I'm going to take the sum, I'm going to say, hey, make the sum increase by that number. Make the sum increase by that number. So sum equals sum plus numbers I, and then eventually, what should I console log out? Not 10, but the sum. And I go ahead and I run this, and I'll set myself a hypothesis, right? I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, that should give me 10. I put in all this work. I should get 10. I run this. What? What? That's not what I expected, right? Let me try it again. Okay, let's do 9, 4, 2, 3. What does this do? What? I'm seeing a pattern here, right? I can run this as many times as I want with different variations, right? I'm seeing a bit of a pattern. And the pattern here is that apparently the numbers aren't being added together, they're just being stuck together side by side, right? And I could do things like Google, why are my numbers being stuck together when I add them, right? I could Google that stuff. I'll tell you that right now what's going on, as we saw before, is that the numbers in the array, they weren't actually numbers. And I could see that if I go console.log type of one of the numbers. And what I'm getting back is string, 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 string. I want it to say something like number, 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 number. So I'll say, okay, well, how do I turn a string into a number JavaScript? How to turn a string into a number JavaScript. And there's a couple of different things I could convert a string into an integer. I could convert a string into a number with decimal points. Or I could convert a string to a number. Right? I could dive deeper into this page, but I'll tell you that this one here is fine. Right? What you would do is just explore a little bit more by hopping into something like, actually, you know what, let's just do this real quick. By hopping into something like the node REPL. So, the node REPL, I'm going to write notes about here. The node REPL, what does REPL stand for? Stands for read, evaluate, print, and loop. Read, evaluate, print, and loop. What that means is the node REPL is going to be a program that's going to read what you write, right? It will read whatever you write, evaluate the output, print the output, and loop means rinse and repeat. So the node REPL is accessed by going node. Not with the backticks. You just write node. And now I'm still in my terminal, but instead of seeing the word vagrant here, I don't see anything. And I can write things like 1 plus 1. Got 2. I can write things like 5 plus 4. 9. 1 times 1,000. 1,000. And I could do JavaScript things like console.log hello Maybe hello plus world. And one of the things that I might do is maybe make variables like let number equal, you know what, let me call this string number equals 123 in strings. And now I can test out that stuff that I just read about. Right? There was one called parse int, one called parse float, and one called number. This gives me 123 and it's yellow as opposed to white like it was before. Alright, so if I just go string number, oh, sorry, not white, it's green. So apparently when I parse into the string number, it turns into that. And I could do things like type of, parse int, 1, 2, 3 like that. And it'll tell me, oh, now it's a number. If I do type of, 1, 2, 3, that's a string. And I'm just somewhere where I'm tinkering. I'm playing around with stuff, right? What if I do parse int of 123.05? Sorry, without the type of here. I got 123. I didn't get the 05 there. Right? If I did negative 123.05, I get negative 123. There was a thing called parse float. Right, and you could play around with it and find out that, oh, parse float keeps the 0.05. But what if I do parse float of 123? Okay, that's fine as well. And then there's number, which pretty much does the same thing, whether or not it's a float or not. Just gonna try one thing. Boop. Okay, cool. So by tinkering around a little bit, we'll decide that, okay, like maybe we'll do that. To sum, add whatever the sum was, plus turn numbers I into a number and add it. Does this make sense to everyone? And I've changed essentially one line of code because we used to just have this, and now we have this. Right? Notice I'm doing the minimal amount of work to kind of get somewhere, like minimal. And I can run this again and see that I'm getting 32 there, or if I run my test case from before, I get 10. Beautiful. Amazing. So I've essentially made it to a place where, oh, and I could do negatives. Let's see. Negative 2, 6. Woo! Right? The issue is if I go 0.5, that's not doing what I want it to do anymore. Right? In my original problem statement, I said that I wanted to ignore non-whole numbers. But if I go here, like, I've got write a Node.js program. I've got unlimited numbers of command line arguments, and I can test this. I can add as many things that I want. That's a lot of 10s. Right? It didn't get upset at me. I'm going through each and I'm printing out the sum, and now I'm on the stretch, which is skip any non-whole numbers and do support negative numbers. I do have negative number support. I didn't even intend to do that. But the skipping non-whole numbers, that might be something I have to work on a little bit. So what we're going to do is hop into the Node debugger. Right? It's not a program that takes away bugs. That would be really cool. Like, ooh, here's a bug, let's debug it. There you go. Like scraping off a moldy bit of cheese. Like, oh, debug. It's not going to be like that. But it will be a program that'll help us figure out where the bugs are. So the Node debugger here, I'm gonna just grab a little bit of an example. I'm gonna put it Okay, so basically the way this is going to work is that I showed you that you can run programs by going node and then the name of the program. But you can also run programs with a thing. Let me just make a separate one here. Console.log. Heyo. I just need a bunch of lines to just kind of look through it. What up, my dudes? It is Tuesday. Woot. Okay, I've just got some lines. And this is debug.js. Right now, if I run this, node debug.js, I just get all the stuff that I said I would console log. No surprises here, right? Just a bunch of lines. There is a node debug, and then the name of the file. Let me actually write it instead this way. I'm gonna go node inspect, and then the name of the file. It's the exact same thing, calling it node debug or node inspect. It's just for some reason when you do node debug, the first line says you should use node inspect instead. That's all. So just wanted to show you if I did node debug, this one says node debug is deprecated. You should use node inspect instead. So node inspect. And something interesting happens here is I see the first line of code that I didn't actually really write, like function exports require module file name dir name. I never wrote that, but that's something that every Node program implicitly has. Right? You don't see it, but it's implicitly there. And then I start seeing parts of my code, like console log heyo and console log what up and console log my dudes. And I can run every line of code independently by going next, next, next. And I'll see that this little ticker is moving down. And I'll see that every time it runs the thing, I'll see the output being printed over here, like what up just got printed, or heyo got printed, right? It's a little ugly to look at, but it is something that lets you go through your code line by line. Next. I think there's a previous, no? Previous? Guess not. It's just next, right? And keep working your way through the code line by line. Purpose of this is that you can follow the flow of your program and see if it's doing exactly what you thought it was doing. So right now, like I have all these console logs, but what if instead I had a for loop? I had a for loop that, console.log I, maybe. Right, maybe that's what it does. And I could run that with the node debugger, or inspect, and just say next, 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 and watch my program go through this loop slowly, right? Slowly, just to see if it's doing what I intend for it to do. Now, your programs are going to be big. You don't want to have to go like line by line by line and everything. So instead, what you'll do, if you choose to use this tool, is put what we call a debugger line. So I'm going to go back to my console log statements here instead, and throw the word debugger, and maybe another debugger here. And what these are is breakpoints. So I can start my program. And I can tell it to run until you find a breakpoint with cont in new. Continue. Nope. Cont. Sorry. The word should be cont. And the program just starts running. And these are all the console logs. Heyo, what up, my dudes? It. And it goes until it finds one of my breakpoints. And then maybe from the breakpoint I can go next, 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 next. Or from the breakpoint, what I can do is, so I go cont to the breakpoint, and I go cont to the next breakpoint, because I've set many. Right? So you might set up a whole bunch of breakpoints and just cont to see where you're going. I said that this thing is kind of ugly to look at, because it is. I don't like it at all. So instead what we can do is, you'll notice that when you run node inspect, gives you some weird link up here and all that. And what we can do, and of course I forgot to write the path over here. What we can do is go to Chrome, and Chrome can watch the debugger. And I just need to go find the link for this really quick. Did I put it in here? More debugging. Chrome inspect. So if in Chrome you go to the URL chrome://inspect, you get to see a list of current debuggers that are running. So did I stop my debugger? Current debuggers that should be running. And this is frustrating. This was stretch for today's thing. I didn't like need to show it to you, but what you should be able to see, I'm not sure why it's not working right now, is see a list of the things that are running, which should include we'll see 9222. I'm just gonna need a second to figure out 9229 9229. So essentially what's supposed to happen, I'll get it to work eventually and show you, but what's supposed to happen is that a list of all of your current node debugging instances should pop up here, and when you click on it, it gives you a better UI for seeing your debugger. I'll debug why it's not working later and send it out in the notes. But the instructions for it will be in there. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe I just have an update to my Chrome that broke things. That happens sometimes. But yeah, let's see. Hopefully, if I get it to work for the breakout today, I'll show you the breakout. Point of the thing is that we have a place where we can run our code line by line, and also a place where, let me stop this and put also a place where if I have a debugger statement like this and I run my program, to a particular place in my debug, and I want to find out what value of I currently am at, and I want to actually play with my program, I can type the words REPL, and what it does is it literally starts me in a REPL session at that point in my code. So I have access to anything, right? Like, what is I? It's 4 right now, right? I could change things. I could add stuff. I could go, console.log I plus 4, right? I'm just doing some JavaScript. I could do things like, hey, change I equal to 35, right? Set I equal to 4 again. I could do whatever I want. And then when I'm done with it, I can go Control C to go back into the debugger and go continue and just continue, right? And the usefulness of this is that, maybe you have a big program, you want to dive in and just like mess around with stuff and see what happens. You can use the debugger for it. Now, I really, really want to stress that this debugger stuff that I've shown you, this is not necessary for you right now, right? I'm trying to show you that the tools that you're learning can go deeper, right? And if you find yourself with some extra time, or if you think that like maybe something like this would be useful for you right now, snag me or one of the mentors, right? And we'll show you more about how to use this tool, right? The way that you should strive to debug right now is to throw console log everywhere. Do you notice how I console logged a whole bunch of stuff? Right? Even to the point where you're like, why are you even console logging that? Right? Console log everything so you know what's going on in your program. Okay? If I was to break kind of this philosophy down into words, it's that bugs happen at this stage in your career because code can be opaque. And what I mean by opaque is that it can be difficult for you right now to look at code and actually understand what it's doing. Right? You'll get to a point where that stuff will seem super clear, but right now, if you have a particular idea and you try to code it out, you might not be actually coding out what you think you are. Right? So you can get around that by make your code transparent, right? Or as transparent as possible. Can curb those issues. And what I mean by making your code transparent is A, console log everything so you know what's happening. You know, B, write nice code. Right? Write clean code wherever you can, split things into variables, right? Indent things for yourself, right? I'm going to be a bit of a jerk when I come do your assistance requests. If you haven't indented your code properly, right? I'm going to ask you to do that before I help you with any issue that you have. Right? Any issue. You're going to be like, Nima, where's the bathroom in this office? I'm going to be like, did you indent your code? Right? So indent your code. Cool. Now, is there anything else that I want to say here? Fusion over syntax, minutes rule. I mean, I think this is all I want to say for now. Are there any questions? Yes. Oh. Just wham. Yeah, so what you can do is, you do the 2 slashes. But VS Code, sorry, not VS Code, Sublime, and really like many of the text editors that you use will let you do things like, if I am currently on a line, if I go command and slash, it'll toggle a comment on. And if I go command and slash again, it'll toggle it off. And you can do that for blocks of code as well. So command slash will toggle all of that. Command slash will untoggle all of that. Great question. Right. Anything else? Yes. So the word debugger here. So debugger, you can write it if you wanted to anywhere in your code, right? So like it's a whole line on its own, right? So I want a debugger breakpoint between these 2 lines, so I put debugger in here to put a breakpoint, right? If I have this and I run my program on its own, like node the program, it'll just ignore the debugger statements. The debugger statements are only used, or they're only cared about if you go node inspect and then run it, because it's like running node in a special mode. Cool. All right, no more questions? Cool. I am here for the rest of the day, and we will have breakout in the afternoon. The thing that we're going to focus on in breakout, just to give you a heads up, is we're going to dive into the scope. How does scope work in JavaScript, right? Where do variables live? How are they born and how do they die? Like, that's the thing that we're going to look at. And as a developer, how do you read code, right? Regardless of the language it's in, how are you going to like start interpreting it in your head? So we're going to do a lot of whiteboard stuff. I will actually show one more thing here. Imagine there's a function called say hello. So you're all familiar with functions at this point, correct? Say hello, console.log. Hey, it's your boy. I want to start every lecture with that. Like, hey, or like, you know who it is. So, just a function that console logs something. If I hop into the debugger, like inspect debug.js like this, like in that thing that I was showing you, and I at any point decide to go REPL, I have access to anything that I should have access to at that point in my code, including say hello. Do you see me just run a function from the REPL in the middle of my program? Right? Hey, it's your boy. And then I could leave. I could call this function as many times as I want. And I could leave and continue. Yeah. So I just wanted to show you that. Cool. So I will see you actually soon, because I think I'm mentoring and then I'm doing lecture. Is that a question? Yeah.
Like say for like even like way advanced like kind of like debugging, is it common practice to use console.log all the time still?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
That's another way that is easier. I don't know if it's good to use that, but I'm sure you've heard of Python Tutor.
Yeah, so Python Tutor is something that we're going to explore in the breakout, but you can absolutely jump into it right now. So Python Tutor is a program where you'll write a bunch of JavaScript. So console.log, like we just did, heyo, and console.log, hi. Okay, just a bunch of code. And you can click visualize execution and it'll show you the code running line by line, right? So we're going to play around with this in depth in the breakout, and I'll have some examples that really exploit this tool. Right? I actually do want to touch on your note about, like, is it common to use console log all the time? It kind of depends, right? Depending on the scope of your project, you might use like this debugger, right? You might use some bigger tools that do like a bunch of debugging. It's just kind of hard to explain at this point without introducing a bunch of stuff. But other languages, like other than JavaScript, have like big tools for debugging giant programs. Other text editors, so not Sublime by default, but like there's other text editors like VS Code, have built-in debugging environments. Where like you don't necessarily need to console log stuff, you can just watch values change because they're like visual. But it kind of depends on the scope of the problem that you're working on. As far as bootcamp goes, I would recommend that throughout all the 10 weeks, you should just be console logging non-stop, right? And if you're interested, I'll show you more advanced debugging techniques as we kind of go along. Right? Cool. I will see you really soon, and then we're going to have breakout this afternoon. Thanks, everyone. Wait, that did answer your question, though, right?
Oh yeah, but I can imagine like for a huge,
Yeah.
program,
Mhm.
console.log becomes like muddled.
Exactly.
Like when you just get one value or something.
Yeah, so as you get to that, we'll have better solutions for it. Sweet. Thanks, everyone.